Hello and welcome back to my magic storytelling shed. Welcome to the second in the series of Lockdown Library Tales. Today we have a story that comes to us all the way from Cambodia, a very long way away. Now some of you may have had the privilege of experiencing my magic storytelling bag. This is my magic storytelling bag. It's full of magic objects. Now, this story that I'm going to tell you is actually about another magic storytelling bag. So I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. It's called A Bag Full of Stories. "Please tell me another story, please," begged Lom. "No, you must go to sleep now," said his old servant. So Lom snuggled down in bed and thought about the story he had just heard. Every night, since he had been a small boy, the old servant had told him wonderful stories. Stories about huge giants and powerful wizards, about fierce tigers and wise elephants, about rich emperors and beautiful princesses. Each night it was a new story, and Lom loved to hear them. Lom knew the old servant had been told stories by his mother, and his grandmother, and his great-grandfather, so the stories he told were very, very old. Lom often boasted to his friends about the stories. "Won't you tell them to us?" they asked again and again. "No," shouted Lom, "they're my stories. I won't tell them to anyone." Now, everyone knows that stories need to be told, and because Lom wouldn't pass them on, the stories became trapped in an old bag hanging up in his room. While Lom was growing up to be a handsome man, the old servant still told him a story every night. Then his father arranged for Lom to be married to a pretty girl in the next door village. The night before the wedding, the old servant heard a strange whispering in Lom's room. "What can that be?" he muttered. He listened carefully. The whispering came from the old bag. It was the stories, grumbling to each other. "He's getting married tomorrow," said one. "It's his fault we're all squished into this old bag." "He should have let us out," growled another. "We'll make him sorry," squeaked a third. "I've got a plan," said the first story. "Tomorrow, when he's going to the wedding, in the next village, he'll get very hot and thirsty. I'll turn myself into a well. When he drinks the water, he'll get a terrible pain in his stomach. Just in case that doesn't work, I'll turn myself into a watermelon. When he eats it, he'll get a terrible pain in his head," said the second story. "I'll turn myself into a snake and bite him," said the third story. "Then he'll get a terrible pain in his leg." All the stories chuckled and sneered nastily in the bag. The old servant was horrified. "What am I going to do?" he muttered. "I must stop them somehow. If I warn Lom, he'll think I've gone crazy." All that night the poor old servant lay awake, trying to think of a way that he could save Lom. In the morning, just as Lom was setting out on his horse to lead the wedding procession to the next village, the old servant rushed out and grabbed the horse's bridle. With the sun beating down, he led the horse along the road, up the hill, and down the hill to where there was a well. "Stop!" cried Lom. "I'm thirsty. I want a drink." But the old servant led the horse past the well. Soon they came to a field full of big, juicy, ripe watermelons. "Stop!" cried Lom. "I'm hot and thirsty. I want a watermelon." But the old servant would not stop, and on they went. At the village, crowds of people came out to greet them, waving and cheering. They walked to the bride's house, where the wedding ceremony was held. When this was over, there was a great feast for everyone. The old servant was so worried about the snake, he couldn't eat anything. All the time, he was looking around everywhere for it, but he just didn't see a snake or anything like one. In the evening, when the wedding guests had gone home, Lom and his bride went to their bedchamber. They were alone at last. Suddenly, there was a loud knocking at the door, and the old servant rushed in, waving a huge stick. "How dare you come bursting in here?" shouted Lom. "I'll punish you for this." The old servant lifted the carpet, and there, coiled up on the floor, was a huge, poisonous snake. With one blow, he killed the snake, and he flung it out of the room. "How did you know it was there?" cried Lom, holding his frightened new wife in his arms. The old servant explained about the bag of angry stories and the harm they had been planning for Lom on his wedding day. "Oh, thank you, my old friend," said Lom. "I was wrong to keep the stories to myself." From then on, Lom told the stories to his wife. One by one, the stories came out of their bag and they were happy. Later, Lom told the stories to his children. His children, of course, told them to their children, and still the stories are being told today. And I know because I've heard them. The end.